Hello from Secure Cloud Provider. Those of you who regularly watch our channel know that we are really big on keeping things simple, streamlined, and inside your cloud native environment. Now, I will add that cloud native is not always your best choice. There are times when, for example, maybe you're managing multiple cloud environments, and it really is in your best interest to use a third-party tool to be able to do something in a cloud agnostic way. Another use case, of course, is when you want to integrate the best of both worlds for, say, two cloud environments. So perhaps, as in the case we're going to use today, maybe you want to use AWS for SageMaker and machine learning capabilities, but you want to use Azure's collaboration services and maybe Azure's Active Directory and possibly even Microsoft Defender for Cloud to be able to monitor all of your cloud environments simultaneously from one spot. Today, we're going to quickly walk through what a couple of those components could look like. To jump right in, today's video is going to cover the foundational architecture that we always recommend to our clients, and then we're going to touch on a couple of specific components for today's video. So the foundational architecture. First of all, do you have a system? That's the first question we always ask. Do you have any system at all? And then if you have a system, is it well architected? Some of the components of a well-architected system are going to be the standards and frameworks that you adhere to. And this refers not only to, say, NIST and HIPAA and any other industry standard frameworks that align to your particular business, but also your own contracts with customers and any other types of standards that you really need to enforce as a business. Then tool rationalization, and this doesn't just refer to third-party tools. This refers to your cloud-native tools, any applications that you built within cloud to enforce your standards and frameworks, as well as any third-party tools that might be integrated in your environment. Now, as you know, we really encourage cloud-native solutions wherever that's possible. However, there are times when it really is better to use a third-party tool or to, say, integrate two cloud environments, which is what we're going to look at today. Do keep in mind that you need to know why you're doing that whenever you do so, because you are expanding your cloud's trust boundary. In today's video, we're specifically going to talk about an approach and the corresponding processes for setting up a couple of components of this system. We're not going to deal with the automation, and we're also not going to deal with the documentation today. In today's video, we're going to talk about identity provider and permissions management, which relate to identity and access management, keeping in mind that identity and access management is a piece of the holistic architecture. We're also going to look at CSPM and the holistic environment monitoring just briefly. Now, a quick disclaimer is that we are demoing this in Secure Cloud Provider's sandbox environment. Please do not attempt this in production. Know that if you do, you could potentially break things, especially if you resort to trying to delete roles or doing anything that could potentially orphan those roles within an application that depends on them. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to just go here down to my Identity Center tab here. And when I open this up, it's going to have me re-authenticate, but note that it redirects from AWS to Azure. That's because I'm using Azure as my identity source. So I'm going to select my name here, Lori Heim at securecloudprovider.com. And since I'm already logged in within the past hour, it's not going to have me re-authenticate with my MFA. But the reason that I'm redirecting everything through Azure in the first place is because Azure offers really good options for enforcing specific MFA types. I use FIDO keys. I think they are great YubiKeys, and I highly recommend those. All right, so now that we're here in the AWS accounts, I'm going to go to SSO because I want to show you how I've set up Identity Center. I only need read access in this case, so I'm going to use that role that I have here. Now, the dashboard, as you can see here, contains a couple of things that you would look through. You could confirm your identity source, which if you did that, you would see that we have an external identity provider right here, and that the provisioning method is SCIM. It's not manual, it's SCIM. And then if you go to your groups, you're going to see the specific groups that were all provisioned via SCIM. They were not created manually. If they were created manually, it would say manual here. This is all provisioned from Azure. Now, a couple of notes before we skip over to Azure are, first of all, the AWS accounts. This is set up according to an organization that was deployed via Control Tower. That means that these core accounts here were deployed via Control Tower and are managed by default by Control Tower. And then additionally, we provisioned a couple of specific accounts for network and SSO that we use specifically just for those capabilities. Now, the permission sets are also another really important piece here. Here's where you could define the permission sets or the sets of policies, AWS policies, And you should do that via automation. Although we're not getting into the automation today, whatever type of infrastructure as code that you use, it is important that you do this via automation and that you know which permission sets are assigned to which groups. All right, so now let's go ahead and hop on over to Azure. The way that you would see what our integration looks like is you would go to Enterprise Applications first, and you're going to see the application that we set up called Secure Cloud Provider Identity Center. Now we could look at several different sections here. I'm only going to focus on the provisioning and on the users and groups for now. So the provisioning, to look at that first, this opens up a new section that includes a lot more about provisioning right here, but you can see that, you can pause provisioning, delete the configuration, etc., which is not something that you would want to do. You could look at the properties, etc. But within this, if you select provisioning again, you're going to see the provisioning mode, which is automatic, and then you could also see the mappings. Here you can see that we have enabled the provisioning of Enter-ID groups, and we've also enabled the provisioning of users. So the users would be in those groups, in other words, provisioned to those groups. And then the groups that we've defined here are these specific to AWS. Now, it is important to note that this is just a subset of our overall Azure groups. Our Azure groups contain these, but they also contain the other SharePoint specific and other specific groups that we've set up separately from the Secure Cloud Provider Identity Center. The important thing to note is that this is done via automation and that your creation of groups and your creation of users should also be done via automation on the Azure side. Now for the automation of permission sets, we recommend that you manage that automation on the AWS side, just because it is AWS policies, and wherever those policies may be upgraded, etc., you're probably going to be in AWS and noticing it there. All right, now to quickly look at the provisioning logs, here you can see that we did just provision some updates today that were successful, and you would see those by looking over on the AWS side and seeing the updates. I won't get into that right now. For today, I just wanted to point out quickly what that integration looks like when using Azure as the identity source for AWS. And then secondly, to point out that the provisioning of users and groups on the Azure side should be done via automation, even though we're not getting into that today, and the provisioning of the permission sets should be done on the AWS side. Now to quickly go over to Microsoft Defender for Cloud, I want to quickly show you the setup here in our sandbox as well. As soon as you land on the overview, you're going to see that we have integrated our 7 AWS accounts here so that they are monitored. We've also integrated our 3 GCP projects and our single Azure subscription here as well. Now, if you look at the setup, you're going to see that here. You can also go down here under Management to take a look at your environment settings. And here in the environment settings, you can see which plans you've selected for each of these. So for the Azure tenant group, you would have to drill down a little bit and get into the specific subscription here. Within, you have the tenant group, then you have the management group here, and then you have the subscription within that. And here you can see that we've applied 12 of the 13 plans. Then for AWS, you could see that you have 4 of 4 plans applied to all of the accounts, and for GCP as well. Now, if you want to take a quick look at what those plans are, we can do that here. You just go over here to take a look at the settings and click yes, even though we're not actually going to edit anything. And you can see that what we have turned on is the Defender CSPM, and we also have the servers, databases, and containers turned on as well. So that was just a very high-level look at what it might look like to integrate 2 cloud environments when it does really make sense to do that, where you're using perhaps Azure as your Active Directory source, and you're also using Azure to monitor your environments, but maybe you're doing a lot of other things in AWS. So yes, you would have expanded your trust boundary for your cloud, but the reason for doing so is to be able to leverage the best of both worlds. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day. Bye.